Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to day 2 of Motion Blur Week, and today we're going to talk about a couple free options that you can do in After Effects to add motion blur to your Cinema 4D renders. So I've got our render here without any motion blur. Alright, so our footage looks pretty good, but it's going to look amazing once we get some motion blur on here. So I have two ways to do this in After Effects with built-in plugins, and the first one is CC Force Motion Blur. So go ahead and dump that on there. Alright, so the thing you need to make sure to do is turn on frame blending, otherwise you can see it's not working. So we'll go ahead and click on this guy twice, and that'll turn frame blending on for the layer, and then we need to turn on the overall global frame blending switch. Turn that guy on and you can see that it's calculating, and now we have a little bit of motion blur here. So our motion blur samples, we'll go ahead and kick those up a little bit, maybe like 32. Actually, let's just go to 16 for now. And then you also have your shutter angle, which is going to be how long and dramatic the blur is. So if we kind of start cranking this guy up a little bit, let's see what that looks like. So you can see that this is looking pretty good, right? So let's go ahead and check my RAM preview settings. I'm going to go ahead and drop it down to half for now. And we'll go ahead and do a RAM preview for just a few frames, just so you can kind of see how long this is going to take to RAM preview. You can see that it definitely slows things down. This guy is also calculating a few frames back and a few frames afterwards, just like it was doing in Cinema, but this is definitely a lot faster than Cinema. So you can see that already it's adding quite a bit, right? There's a little bit of warping and a little bit of kind of artifacts, but they're very subtle, and I think it looks pretty good. So that's one option that you have, and let's go ahead and talk about the second option. We'll take this guy off and let's turn off our frame blending. For this one, we're going to use Time Warp. And Time Warp is usually used for timing effects. And by default, when we go ahead and throw this on here, you're going to see that it gets kind of weird. That's because it has adjusted the speed to 50% by default. So we want to put that at 100%. We don't want to actually use the time warping features of this effect. What we want to do is enable motion blur. Go ahead and turn that on. You're going to see that nothing happens. You have to make sure to change the shutter control from automatic to manual. And then you're going to see our motion blur here. And just like before, we have the shutter angle and the shutter samples. So the samples, we'll try kicking that up to 16 again. And let's do a little bit of a render and see what the times are on this one. From what I found, Time Warp is pretty render intensive. They both are, really. It's going to bog down your machine, there's no doubt about it. So what I usually do is I'll do all my editing, all my compositing, all my effects with this guy off. Then I'll check this on and then hit render and go get my coffee. So although it does seem like it slows things down and it does add a lot of time to your renders, when comparing with Cinema 4D, it's really not that bad. So if you don't want to spend any money on motion blur, I would recommend checking into Time Warp or CC Motion Blur. Sometimes they have a little bit of artifacts that you might have to kind of work around, but overall they do a really nice job, and they really do add a lot to your 3D animations. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about an option that you actually have to pay for. It's a plugin, but it is by far the best option out there. So make sure to check back for that, and we'll talk again soon. Bye everybody.